Live and direct. Hello, beautiful people. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Wow, do we have a show today? Today, I have the pleasure, the honor, my gosh. This gentleman is known as the ambassador of Harlem. And it's incredible that throughout all the years that we've been around, I have so many people in common with this amazing gentleman. And if you guys hear any crazy noise in the background, it's my gardener, which I had just told him to shut up, and possibly it'll go on for like a minute, but we'll get rid of it. Listen, guys, I want to just get this guy on board, get him on the beautiful screen so you could really enjoy this journey with this beautiful man, Mr. Musa Jackson. God, his name even sounds fabulous. So let me get Musa. Let's see. Musa, where are you? Here we go. Let's see. Musa will be joining us momentarily. My favorite word. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Musa Jackson. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
You know what? It's so
Yeah.
funny. You look like you have a halo.
I say what?
Like you look like you have a halo.
Oh. Oh.
Oh my God! You glow. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this man. I cannot put in one page the amount of accolades that you have. You have achieved so much in such a young age, and we will get into all these accolades throughout the next hour. But
Okay.
my God, from being a model to a producer, a Harlem Renaissance man, community leader, activist, entrepreneur, screenwriter. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. Someone just said, hey, he does look like he has a halo. See?
Oh,
I'm
wow.
not crazy. Musa Jackson, it is such an honor for me to have you on board and to conduct this beautiful interview. I'm a huge fan, brother. I am a huge fan. And I want to start with a really simple question. It says 100 years of Harlem legacy.
hmm
Break down, break it down to me. 100 years of Harlem legacy.
Wow. So, as the story goes, my grandfather's sister and brother left South Carolina in the Great Migration. It's a historical moment in Black history, and they traveled up north. And the North Star at that point was Harlem. And they landed in Harlem in 1918, 1919, somewhere around there. And so it's over 100 years now, and which would predate the Harlem Renaissance, which started in 1920. And they landed in around very close to 125th Street, the heart of Harlem, around 128th Street. And to give you some context, the great Langston Hughes was on 127th Street,
Okay.
and the great James Baldwin was on 30th or 31st Street. So they're all within 5-block proximity of each other, along with the Bill Holiday, along with all the rest of them. So I kind of grew up, I didn't know a lot of this until I got older. Because it just was. You don't walk around like history. You know what I mean? It's just family, right? And it wasn't until as an older person and I, really got into my culture and just who I was, I started to find out more things about my family and just the connection that they had to just being real people and wanting a better life and wanting better for their community.
So you never left Harlem?
Well, I mean, I've left Harlem, but
of course you
Harlem never left me. Harlem
I
is
love
always
that.
so. I mean, I lived in Paris for a bit. I lived on the Upper West Side for a moment. I lived in the East Village for a minute. But I always kind of kept a space for myself in Harlem. Harlem is never gonna. I don't think it's like, you know. It's like, you know, your wife, your partner that will never divorce you.
Of
That's what I
course.
kind of Harlem like.
How, tell me about this transition into the fashion world. How did that all begin? Because I mean, I remember, if I'm not mistaken, you possibly the first black African American model who graced the campaign for the Gap.
Right. So
And
that
you
came.
had the pleasure of working with the late, great, dear friend of mine, Patrick Demarchelier. What an
Correct.
honor. Tell me about that journey into becoming a model.
So you're absolutely right. And I was grew up in New York, Harlem, of course, and I graduated from the famed school, Music and Art, in 1983, and was a student, about to be a student at Parsons School of Design. So I had received a scholarship to Parsons, and I was really there for fashion. I was going as a designer, and like anybody else, you needed a job. And I was kind of skinny, and people said I had a great smile, and I kind of was a cute kid. And I was getting a lot of attention when I went down to a place called Soho. In 1983, it wasn't Soho as we know it. It was
Yeah,
basically artist
yeah.
lofts, if people can remember things back in those
Oh, yeah.
days. And so there was a store called Parachute,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I walked into Parachute to get a job as a salesperson, and because I needed to pay for college, or, you know, at least have extra money. And the photographer, there's a photographer there, and he thought I was the model for the campaign. And so I was like, no, no, I'm just here to fill out an application. And he said, no, no, no. The owner came and said, no, no, I'm going to let you become a salesperson if you'll model. And I said, okay, wait, does that mean I got a job? Because I didn't really know what modeling was. And so he said, oh, we want you in the campaign. So ironically, on my first date, I become a model and a salesperson for the Parachute. And literally in 2 months, I was in GQ, in Interview Magazine, and all the magazines, because Parachute did amazing marketing back in those days.
Right.
And so I was kind of
Right
famous,
place, right time.
right? I was kind of famous in the downtown scene, which at that point was kind of cool because I just wanted to get into clubs. So they would see me and they go, "Oh, that's the guy from the magazines," and like the velvet rope would come open, and that's all I really wanted. And so, and at the club at Area opening, I went to the opening of Area, and
I was there.
you were there, and I was there with I went with Keith. I was there. Keith Haring was a very good friend, and we were all there that night. And the editor of GQ magazine, the grooming editor, Camille Duhay,
Oh, yeah.
he saw me and he said, "Are you a model?" And I said, I can be." And he said, "I want you in the magazine." And I had a job. And then I went to Bruno Desange, and Bruno Desange, and Bruno, his assistant was Frederick Fakai. He was an intern, and Odile Gilbert, and they were all like doing this at me, and they were like, "Oh, he's so cute." And they said, "Well, my friend Pauline Bonachet just opened an agency, and I need for you to go see her." And I went to see her, and she was only taking women, and I was literally about to cry, and she said to me, "But I'm going to take you." And I was the only man with Pauline, which is where I met, who's on the call, the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my life, Karen Alexander.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
I, I lost
I've
my,
said many
lost,
stories about Karen,
I
and
lost
boy, that.
my, she'll tell you, I lost my mind. And we were there together with our beloved Pauline, and I was there for only a year. But I worked right away. I was booking everything. I was booking. They would send me the stuff, and people said, "Oh, I love his smile, his energy," and I was just booking, doing a lot of 17, a lot of Mademoiselle, a lot of In Style, Macy's. You know, which was a gold. You know, catalog was everything back in those days,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I back booked. Me and Karen did that together. We booked Macy's, I think, with Albert Watson and the rest of the gang, and we were doing that for a while. And then I went to Men with the great Nadia, as
Of
Matt
course.
called Pauline, and she said, I guess she had seen me and she wanted me. And I think Pauline wanted me to have a home. And then I was like, oh my God, is she going to take me? And she said, yes. and I remember that those early days of being with Nadia and the guys, you know, I wasn't in college anymore. This is, I always say this is my fraternity, is working with these
Of
men.
course.
And
I,
then that led to right away, that led to the Gap ad. At that time, you know, there weren't too many crossover situations, and the Gap was such a national brand. And I don't know how many people they looked at, maybe about 3,000 or 4,000 people. And Patrick saw me, and he said, "That's the man." And I went in. It was me, Josie Lorraine, I think Veronica. They were the girls, and I was the only black male. And he took like 10 frames. I'll never forget that. Every time he dressed me, he'd take 10 frames, and I was like, "Wait, can I do? I mean, are we gonna do more?" He said, "No, you're
you're
not."
done.
He said, "He's a natural," and I thought I messed up because every shot he took 10 frames, and then it came out, and I was just like, "It's Patrick Demarche Chevalier. He knows what he's doing."
Oh,
And the rest
yes.
is history, because it really kind of opened a lot of doors in terms of the commercial marketing of African American men in sportswear that wasn't necessarily designed for black men. It was designed for all of us. And so that kind of just really opened up a lot of doors. And I was always proud to do something like that coming from Harlem, because I was the first one from Harlem to have this kind of
I
first black male from Harlem to ever have this acknowledgement as a model.
listen. I I'm really impressed with your resume as a model, and the fact that you worked with some dear friends of mine who are happen to be master photographers.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to name a few: Mr.
Yep.
Walter Chin,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Mario Testino, Olivero Toscani, which was my first modeling job,
Wow.
Fabrizio Ferri, Il Più Bello, Robert Erdman, and Perry McKinley. My gosh, what an amazing! I mean, that's incredible that you had the
Yeah.
honor to work with.
Fabrizio Ferri, I did the Jabot campaign in Italy, and
Right.
then Lothar Schmidt for French Vogue. We did Eddie Coley for Spanish Vogue, and then we did Albert Watson for Levi's, and we did Walter Chin recently. Then I did, oh God, I'm forgetting now. I did, Maritostino. Oh my God. Maritostino was the first, one of the first photographers to really kind of, and David Chappelle were the first two that really kind of saw something in me. Mario loved me. I loved him. And he put me in Vogue with Kirsty Bowser. And
Of course.
we were two kids. It's the beginnings of our career. And we were just two kids. We were both in kind of in Ralph. And if you know, in those days, wearing Ralph Lauren and any type of magazine was really kind of revolutionary, especially on black people, because you just didn't see that often.
No.
And so, but for the two of us, you know, I went to private school, and you know, I grew up in Harlem, but I went to private school. So I was wearing polo shirts from the time I was 5 years old. You know what I mean? So the fact that you're actually paying me to wear a polo shirt and that you're telling me it's revolutionary in fashion was just kind of funny to me.
Yeah,
And they
that's
were
big.
like, "You look so good at it," and I'd be like, "This is my uniform."
That's big. That's big. That's big. Listen, tell me.
Mhm,
There's so much that I want to go over. I took some notes last night and I went, oh
mhm.
my God, I hope I have enough time to go over everything with this man. But something really that came up immediately in my head: Summer of
Oh,
Soul.
oh, wow.
Oh my goodness. Talk to me about that experience.
Mm. That's a that will be probably one of the most pivotal moments in my life for many reasons.
Sure.
The reality of Summer of Soul is that it was the documentary that was done by Questlove. Um, in When we shot it, it was about the Harlem Cultural Festival that took place in Harlem in 1969. Um, my parents, I mentioned before, we're from Harlem, but in terms of like my father was an activist. He knew Malcolm X. You know, I know, right? And my mother was, you know, Black studies and culture was one of the big things in our home. So she took us to this great festival, and beknownst to me, it really opened my eyes because there was so many people, and I got to get up close to the stage, and I got to witness Nina Simone and Fifth Dimension and Sly and the Family Stone and all the great artists, Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, at 4 years old. And I had a very high Q, as I was told, and I have a photographic memory. So I kind of recorded everything in my head and really just thought about it like, I mean, as something that was just a part of my life, and not realizing that that memory I had was actually wasn't given to the public because the person who wanted to tell everyone about it, no one wanted to hear it. So he had the film in the basement. This would be Hal Tochi, for 50 years. So when they heard about this incredible concert, like who was there? And you got to realize 50 years had passed, and being the Harlem ambassador, they called me. I was the first person they called, and they said, "Hey, Musa, how about this Harlem Cultural Festival? Is there any way you can connect us to the people that were there?" And I said, "Well, I was there." And they were like, "First of all, how old are you?" And I said, I told my age, and he said, "You don't look that age." And he goes, "But let's hear what you have to say anyway." And I said, "Well, I was 4 years old." He said, "Oh, what can a 4-year-old remember?" And literally, because of my interview, it changed the whole film around. They said it was my story they decided to have as the loop between all the stories. So I opened the film and I closed the film. And I'm in throughout the film because it was what happened to this 4-year-old boy that would grow up to become the Harlem ambassador in a way. And it's true. It was the pivotal moment in my life that made me become very community activist, that made me give back to my community. And then here's a film that comes along. I'm in it, and that would go on to win the Oscar. And I was at the Oscars. They when they asked to come, you know, and they said, well, everyone's asking who's this little kid. And it was in the film because they said everyone was crying. And I remember being at a table and I'm sitting across from Steven Spielberg. And he came up to me and he said, I just want you to know, I had a crush on Malamaku too.
Oh my
I love you said
goodness.
that in the movie. You nailed it. And then other people were coming up to me and they were telling me how, why I was so important in the film. They said, not everybody can sing, not everybody can play the drums like Stevie Wonder, but everybody was a 4-year-old child once in this room. And I said, oh, that's what it is. So,
Question. This is like a wild question. Did you ever meet Malcolm X?
did I ever meet? Me? Oh,
Yeah.
no. I was born 7 days after he was assassinated. Literally.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I tell you why
And
I
it
asked
was
that
pretty
question.
big in my family because, like I said, my father knew him, and he kind of influenced his life. And my father would go on to become as a Harlem organizer for Congress of Racial Equality. My father was just sanitation, regular guy, a family guy. We're not talking about some big politician, but he was also someone who wanted to see better for his community. And Malcolm X was definitely about real people. So he connected with him very early on before he became Malcolm X. And so when he was assassinated, my mother was pregnant with me. And I think she said I kicked or something like that. And she was like, I'm not having a baby on this date. And I came a week later.
Now, I'll
So I
tell you
feel like there's a,
little segue, funny story about my life and
uh-huh.
why I asked that. I didn't grow up in America. I grew up in Latin America, and we don't study. We study Spanish history in Latin America. We don't study American history or Black history or anything. So I didn't know who Malcolm X was.
Wow.
And when the movie came out, I was on a date with this girl, and here we are watching the movie. And throughout the middle of the movie, I looked at her. I said, "When does he start playing music?" And she goes, "What?" I go, "He's not playing any. Is this guy gonna play music?" Go, "Oh my, who do you think he is?" I go, "Well, I always hear his name in like reggae songs about Malcolm X. So I'm thinking the guy's a musician, and I'm like, oops, I I didn't. I had no clue. I
Wow.
mean, really, because when I came to America, I didn't study. I knew nothing about Rosa Parks or
Mm,
Martin Luther King. I knew nothing about these humans. Zero.
mm,
With me, it's like talk to me about Evita Perón, Simon Bolivar. I don't know Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, who's like our answer to Shakespeare.
right.
So I didn't know anything about that, and got to learn. And then I get to hear stories from people like yourself that, wow, what an incredible experience that your parents knew this incredible man who did so much for the black culture.
Yeah.
So congrats to you, man, on that aspect. Listen, let's continue this, and I want to speak about
Okay.
something really interesting. Yeah,
Mhm.
the African American Day Parade.
Oh, okay.
I've never knew anything about this. Tell me how that came about.
So the African American Day Parade is something they celebrate in New York City, like any other parade. It's like when you hear about the Irish Day Parade. This is the black version of that, and it takes place obviously in the summertime, and it's a big deal. It's been going on for 50 years, 50 or so years, and like anybody else with my family, I would go to the African American Day Parade and watch from the
Sure.
sidelines. But this particular year, I think the year you're talking about last year,
Yeah.
I was named the Marshal, which is a high honor. You open the parade. I wasn't the Grand Marshal. That would be Bevy Smith, who I loved with all my heart. And I was the Marshal.
That is
So,
huge. That
yeah,
is huge.
yeah.
Oh, I'm about to hit you with another
Uh-oh.
one. You really have to break this one down to me.
Okay.
You go out and you write a screenplay
Uh-huh.
and you present it to Disney.
So you want to hear the real, I'm going to give it the
I
real
mean,
deal. Screenplay.
talk to me about
I,
that.
I wrote a screenplay. It took me about a year and a half to write. And I needed to write this particular screenplay because it dealt with something very important that had happened in my family, um, or with close people around my family. I'm not going to say in my family. And so I just wrote from the heart. And a good friend of mine at the time was working for Hollywood Pictures, which is the Disney division, the drama division of Disney. And she knew I was a writer. And she said, "What's up with that screenplay?" I said, "Well, I just finished it." She said, "Well, I'm coming to New York. I wanna see it. I want to read it. Excuse me." So I said, "Okay, cool." She came. She flew to New York literally the next day. I gave her the screenplay, and I thought nothing of it. I just kind of said, "Let me, her name was Tracy Lee Campbell. I want to give her a shout out."
Shout out to
And um,
Tracy.
Tracy, who's also Gail O'Neill's first cousin. So that's actually, I met Tracy through Gail O'Neill. And anyway, so Tracy comes, she reads the screenplay, and I get a phone call. It was a Thursday. She said, "I want to take you to lunch on brunch on Sunday." 2 days later, I go to brunch, and she's holding the screenplay in her arms like this. And she goes, "I have to have this screenplay." And I said, "Okay, I'm going back to LA." And she took it back to LA. I get a phone call about a week later, and they said, "Disney wants to meet you. Check, you be getting check your mailbox because they're sending a ticket to LA, and we want you to have a meeting with you right away." And I flew to LA, um, um, met with 3 executives, and they said, "We want this screenplay. Now you get the opportunity to choose your agent." And they said, "This doesn't happen. Normally happens the other way around."
Exactly.
And, and I was just like floored. And they said, "Your talent, the way you get into character, the way you understand women, the way you understand a story development is insane." And I chose CAA. So CAA was my first agent. Keith Sears, shout out to Keith Sears. Um, and the particular story dealt with AIDS, but not from gay porn perspective, from a woman's perspective. Uh, my sister's
Interesting.
my sister's best friend when I was growing up died of AIDS back in the early '80s, and I thought to honor her, I would put a script about that. And so at the time, there were 2 screenplays that were out there. There was my screenplay, And there was another screenplay that they went with, and the screenplay they went with is called Philadelphia,
Oh, which,
which went on to win the Oscar. And
yeah, that's
my script went into oblivion, but it would become for people that were there at that time, in Black writers in particular, it's kind of one of those cult scripts that never happened, and it's called Pandora's Box. And but what it did was, it's like, one of those stepping stones in your life. I look at it as a triumph, not as a failure, even though it was never made into a film, because my job was just to write a script, and that's exactly what I did. And it wasn't to make the film; it was just to write a script.
well, it's incredible that you share this story because you mentioned Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very, very powerful film in my life because it came out right around the time when my brother died of AIDS. And my brother was one of the first hetero cases in New York City when there was that whole stigma that AIDS was just a homosexual disease,
Right.
and not they didn't have a clear understanding of it. My brother was a straight male, but he was a bit too busy.
Right. Right.
Um, and when they found out, they like, whoa, this affects everyone.
Right.
And literally, like right around the time he died is when that movie came out. So I never really watched the entire movie. I can never sit through that entire movie. I could watch possibly 10 minutes of it and then I gotta go. So I'm very involved in AIDS organizations out in Los Angeles, AIDS Projects Los Angeles, obviously,
Beautiful.
being the most powerful one. And, we've had many, many events in Los Angeles to raise money for AIDS awareness and things like that. So it, thank you for sharing the story about Pandora's Box. What a name. What made you choose that name,
Well,
Pandora's Box?
it's a fictionalized version of what happened with my sister and her best friend. I actually just I fictionalized it it was about a dancer who was adopted, who comes to Harlem to find her mother and finds instead her sister who has AIDS, and how her life changes when she discovers this fact. And it was in early days, and it was so revolutionary at the time, and it was picked up by, remember before internet, there was Page Six?
Oh my goodness, of course. Page
I was
six.
on Page Six because Janet Jackson and Naomi Campbell, an 18-year-old Naomi Campbell, was going to make her feature film debut as a dancer. Because people don't know that she was a dancer at the time.
Yeah.
But Naomi Campbell's background was in ballet, and this particular character is a dancer. And so they both were vying for the role of this for the screenplay, and which did not happen, by the way, y'all. In case you're looking for the script, but they were both looking, vying for the role, and
Share with me, Jesus. It's just so much that I need to go over with you. Talk to me about the ambassador, the
okay.
magazine,
Mm-hmm.
because I just became aware of it 24 hours ago.
Oh, wow.
Having a conversation with Mark, because Mark Baptiste is
Mark.
that's my brother, that crazy Haitian man.
Mm-hmm.
He's so dear to my heart. The man has an energy that, obviously, when Mark walks into a room, it's a wrap.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing? Hey, Musa.
Tell me
That's Mark.
about this. How long has it been? The magazine, and tell me about it. Tell me about that experience.
Absolutely. So obviously the name ambassador plays on the fact that I'm known as the Harlem ambassador, which I got that title many, many years ago, as what I do in terms of, just really making Harlem more well known than it already is, and making sure that, we're on the map, and being someone who's kind of on the map as a representative with a legacy. It was bestowed upon me. And so when I decided to make a magazine, it was in 2019. I said, "Who are the other ambassadors? Everybody's an ambassador of something." And so I didn't want it to make it about me. I said, "I ain't Oprah Winfrey. It ain't gonna be about me. I've never been on my cover. I wanted to find out the other ambassadors. So I called it Ambassador Magazine, and I had shot a lot of content in 2019 and said, you know what? I'm going to wait until 2020, right after my birthday. I'm a March baby. I'm a Pisces March baby. And I said, I'll launch it 2020 in March. Well, guess what happened in March 2020? The pandemic. And
Pandemic.
just as I was about to
Phil
launch it, the pandemic.
Caccialetti just joined us. I want to give a shout out to Phil Caccialetti, phenomenal, iconic male model. Always been a fan of his. So thank you for joining us, Phil. Continue.
And so then so what happened was I'm in a pandemic with the rest of us. I'm at home. I'm depressed. I mean, my God, the world is, people tend to forget the world felt like it was going to fall apart and or blow up or whatever it was going to do. We were all going to die. I mean, it just was crazy, right? And I had all this content, and it's an online magazine, Ambassador. And I got a good girlfriend of mine. I'll just give a shout out to Sidra Smith. She called me up and she said, yo, what's up with that magazine? This was in May. It was April, but May of 2020. And I said, what magazine? Because I'm all in my head. And she said, your magazine that you was writing. And I said, had all this content. And she said, launch it. And I thought about it and I said, wait a minute, I have everybody at home now. No one's leaving. I have a captive audience. And I launched Ambassador Magazine on May 13th, 2020. And it just took off. The first issue, I got calls from people in the industry, from Essence, Rolling Stones, and Vanity Fair, actually people behind the scenes. And they said, this is fresh, new. We've really caught the zeitgeist of what's happening, and it feels authentic. And I haven't stopped. It's 4 years now. We're at the 83rd issue. We just shot Deborah Cox from The Wiz, but what the magazine is about, really, to me, is about giving people their flowers. People have a career. Sometimes we'll do new people, but for the most part, I love people that have been in the business for a second. And sometimes you tend to forget about those people, and then they're doing other things. Normally, that's what we kind of do. Like Deborah Cox, we knew her from a recording career, right? And now she's on Broadway, and she's also has a wine. She's her own wine business. So I want
to know about that.
See, there you go. You learn something new.
Wow.
And I want people to see the journey. Because what happens is when people, especially with Instagram, is they think you can become a star like that. We're all workers. Omar, I've known of your work and what you've done, incredible things. I mean, people don't even understand what you should be on my cover. One of the things that you've done in regards to being, a man of color who had his own agency and was with some of the greatest models of all time. And being able to, I'm talking about, if you don't know him, study Omar, because then you'll see what I'm talking about. And I think that's the stories. Those are the people that I want to write about. I'm be 60 years old next year. I love young people.
Way. That expression really does fit you perfectly. Black don't crack. I mean,
you gotta take that's for sure.
I'm just really tripping out on this halo on top of your head, man. You glow, mate. I mean, I'm looking at you like, why is this guy glowing?
Oh my
it's
God.
Like, you have this glow, this aura that's beautiful,
oh, no.
man.
Wait.
Who are you looking at?
Oh, wait. Okay, we're good, right?
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay, good. I was looking and I said, oh, wait a minute, something happened. Someone said me, what happened? But I think we're good. So no, back to what I was saying, people, one of the things I love about people with this magazine is you get to find out who they are. You get to find out how they began. And I think I learned so much from their stories. I continually want to grow as a human being. And I feel other people want to find out things. And people have called me. They say, hey, listen, I didn't know anything about this person. And now I need to find out everything about this person because they're inspiring. And that's why I said, you're inspiring.
You said something to me earlier that really struck a chord, which I live my life that way. You say, I'm always curious. And I love that expression because curiosity is such an incredible thing. I'm always curious. I'm interested in everything. You know, everything fascinates me. You know, it's like, oh, really? I'm like still like a little kid when it comes to learning things because we learn every day. You never be, I mean, I don't know when people say, oh, you're the master, the master. I mean, every day is a learning experience the minute you wake up. You get
Yeah.
to
You know what?
learn about, you know, all these things.
But when we
Um,
start being curious, though, that's when things start. That's when things are, it's over. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, because then you get stuck in a certain pattern. And I think what you're doing, look, you're doing this show, right? You're exploring human beings. You're exploring new things. So you're, to me, like me, and you're curious. And I think that's what keeps the spark. That's what keeps us eternally youthful, is that curiosity.
share with us your first experience when you hit Paris.
Oh,
Because that's interesting to me. You know, kid from Harlem,
yeah,
New York, becomes a model, and next thing you know, you're in Paris.
yeah. So,
How was how was that experience?
well, okay, that's a good one because where I come from, specifically at that time, Harlem wasn't the Renaissance that people know of it, and it certainly wasn't this gentrified place that it is today. Harlem was, at a ghetto, a slum, and so I come from the projects of Harlem, and like I said, there was no other models. There was no one that I could look to. I remember when I got into business, God rest his soul, the great Renald White took me under his wing, but he was not from Harlem. He was from Jersey, and he was already the top model of his day. But within my neighborhood, I was the only one. So I remember they gave me a going away party. I mean, I'm talking about mom cooking the whole nine, and I boarded a plane to Paris and arrived in Paris on a weekend. Now that might sound great, right? But you got nowhere the hell to go when you get to Paris, and if you don't know and speak the language, you're just stuck in the hotel.
Wait, you didn't even have an
I,
agency?
I did have an agency. I was with first
With
agency, but what I'm saying,
Paul Hagenauer.
I can't remember. It was I remember my booker was named Oscar,
Okay.
and it was the owner of First came to Pauline's and said we want him, come to Paris, and I went to Paris, like I said, and I got there on a weekend. So I had nothing to do for 72 or 42 hours, 48 hours, but I figured it out. And then when I got to Paris, I was going around, and I remember when I got to the agency, I'll tell you what he said. I go to my agency, and you know what he said to me when I walk in? He says, he's looking at me, and he goes, oh, and he says in a British accent, he says, oh, I'm so sorry. We don't want any blocks today. And I was like, what?
Ooh.
I looked at him. Let me tell you, baby. All of a sudden, the Harlem Kid came out because I was killing it in New York. I left Macy's jobs. People were dying to do Macy's, and I was doing Macy's every week. I left Macy's to come to Paris to do the shows and the collections. I looked at him and said, listen, let me tell you something. I was 19 years old. I said, you're going to send me to everybody and let them decide. He sort of looked back. He said, here, go here. It was to Kenzo. When I got there, I was standing in a line. Everybody in front of me was blonde and blue-eyed. And then there was me. I got in front of Kenzo. I looked at Kenzo. I'm this young kid from the ghetto of Harlem, black kid, string bean, looking at him, smile that probably wrapped around my face. But at this moment, I was just looking at him like, give me a life raft. And I looked at him, I said, he looked at me, he said, where are you from? I didn't say America. I didn't say New York. I said Harlem. And at that time, you might as well said you lived in a garbage can if you said Harlem. And he looked at me and he said, I love Harlem. Have a seat. And we talked for 45 minutes at a casting that was going on, people outside. When I walked outside after having people looking at me like there's a line was down the block. What was this guy talking about? We were talking about Harlem, talking about Billie Holiday. He wanted to have lunch with me. Needless to say, I booked him. I booked Jean Paul Gaultier. I did Stephen Placier. I did Daniel Hechdare. I did French Vogue. I was a star before. Pauline called me and said, "You are a star." I did the most defile for the in my agency that year. And imagine had I said no and I just went home. Imagine had I been discouraged. But because I'm that kid from Harlem, the Harlem ambassador, even then, I wasn't having it. And it changed history. I opened John Pagote, I opened Daniel Hester that year. And I was funny enough, when I got back, I'm with NADIA, and John Paul called and flew me over to Milan to do his first ever show in Milan. It was 10 guys, and 10 of us went to Milan, and then I did the campaign with Lil Schmidt for Jabot, and that was my Paris experience. Ironically, I went back the following year and did some shows, and didn't go back after that because I was working so much in America, and it really came down to dollars and cents for me. I was a very commercial model, and I started doing a lot of commercials. I was booking commercials left and right. I did like 4 in one day. I booked 4 commercials in one day. That's how popular I was in the commercial scene. And that was crazy money. I was doing Dr. Pepper and Pepsi and all that stuff. So I kind of transitioned from, in a way, from modeling. Because they were thinking I was going to be an actor. I didn't have the chops to be an actor, though.
Tell me, how do you feel about the state of the industry? I mean, obviously, we both come from a time where, listen
Mm-hmm.
to you, 4 commercials in one day. And obviously, so people will understand, these are 4 national commercials. They
Correct.
were not buyouts or perpetuity.
Oh,
No,
money was good.
there were sad commercials where
Correct.
your workout was going down the stairs to your mailbox to get those checks that came in every
Ooh,
week. You remember those days when
baby.
opening your mailbox was so important, because those checks from residuals kept coming in and coming in. And I know so many people like yourself that have retired from that 1 or 2 commercials, which doesn't exist anymore. Please share your thoughts on the then and the now.
Well, it's definitely a changed industry. I love the personal touch of when we were all back in the day. There was something so familiar. We were family. I don't think people understand that. We talk about Facebook family, right?
Right.
No. No disrespect, Facebook and IG guys. I love you guys, okay? But there's a difference between family, your family you have at home, and then work family, right? There were so few of us, and we were also, whether it be photographers and models, and we really nurtured and loved one another. Even if we got into fights, listen, you have fights with your brother and sisters, right? That was how we worked things out back in those days. There's Karen Alexander, yes, family and collaboration. Exactly, Karen. And so that's what I miss most, is that, when I think back on those days, I think back with so much fondness of people that meant so much to me. I mean, they are part of who I am today. I carry all of them with me in how I present myself, and I think we all do. I think we are very blessed, Omar, to have come up in that age. I don't think we talk about that enough. I think we will be, but I don't think we talk about what that meant to most of us.
Yes.
And of course, we grew up also in a time where we lost a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Things were happening so wonderfully for some of us, as a lot of our creative colleagues were losing their lives right in front of us.
Yeah.
So we had this mixed emotion that people like you, people like me, people like I saw Karen and Nadia's and the rest of us, we have to survive. We have to tell our stories. We have to honor those that aren't here now, because we knew how important they were, and also how much they would want to see us doing our thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Seeing you and what you've accomplished and what you've done, and you know, I think you sometimes take a moment for yourself. I know you're not. I'm not supposed to be interviewing you, but you take the moment for yourself and think about what you've accomplished and who you are, and you know, those are incredible times that just don't happen today. It's a little impersonal, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has an opinion. Everybody, you know, when you go on Instagram and you're posting stuff, and strangers, millions of strangers can look at your work and they don't know you, but they have this idea that they do. Or when you look at the fashion world, and you know, I remember people who went to school, people who really were in the industry on the front rows, and buyers and sellers and models. And now it's populated with people that maybe if they have 100 million followers and they, you know how to, you know, I don't know what they do. And they can get the front row seat of anything. I mean, there were, you know, I see people walking, you know, Met Gala, up to Met Gala, and they say, oh, he's a TikTok guy. And I'm kind of like, okay, this is the world we live in now. Is we live in now where, you know, people used to work so hard, and really excellence was so important. And now you just,
I,
and I don't know.
I used to be very,
I mean,
you know,
so.
I used to be very involved in Fashion Week Los Angeles, which, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's, I don't know what the hell they call that now today, but I remember possibly 15 years ago attending Fashion Week Los Angeles, and I was looking at the audience and I said, oh, it's a wrap. This is over. Because I said, where are the buyers? Where are the buyers? I'm looking at all these people that are like Insta famous.
They are.
And it's like, why are they here? They're not buying, they're not here to buy clothes. So why are they sitting front row? Like, what is their contribution?
Yeah.
And it brings me to a really interesting question that I love having I love this question. Instagram versus portfolios.
Oh, wait. Say it again. Instagram versus what?
Portfolios.
The portfolio.
Because remember, you had your
portfolio
book.
was everything. Oh, the portfolio was everything, man.
You
I mean,
know,
we're talking about, you know, we're talking about, how about this? Instagram versus reality.
Yeah. Ooh. Ooh.
Okay? Remember, this is before digital. This is before filters. So in other words, my point is that when you got your territory, you didn't know what you were getting a lot of times. You just had to do your best in front of that camera and hope to God it came out properly. Okay? And especially when, you know, so we had to take care of ourselves. We had to work. We just had to make sure it's right. We had to really be engaged with the photographer, because we knew that when we left that, we were like, we had to leave everything there, because we wanted so desperately for our pictures to come out. And I'm going to give you another one, Karen Alexander. I remember one time I came on a set one time, and I'm doing work with the great Karen Alexander, and I was acting a little funny. And you know what she did to me? She said, she held me, she looked at me, she said, get it together. You're not going to mess up my photograph. Baby, it was the best advice I ever got. I looked at her, because first of all, Miss Gorgeous of all gorgeousness, I'm there with her because we did a lot of work together, and she was right. I had went out the night before. I think I was with a buddy of mine, and you know, young people, we do what we do, and I think I came not quite as prepared as I normally have, and she was always prepared. And I was on set with her, and she got me together. I've been together, Miss Karen, ever since.
You know, I'm
That's
going
my
to say, I'm going to tell you a really quick story about Miss Karen Alexander, who obviously we both adore. I had the privilege of having lunch with her. And I have to say, in over 40 plus years of being in this industry, it was the first time I had lunch with a human that her every move was a tear sheet. It was the most craziest thing. Like, I couldn't stop staring at everything. We were picking chocolates, and she's picking chocolates, and every move looks like a photograph. So I had lunch with a photograph.
Right.
it
It's
was
a
like,
work of art.
this person
Yeah,
is
yeah,
she real? And I just could not believe her
right.
beauty and elegance, like in my face. It was like watching a Ralph Lauren ad right in front of my face. So I just wanted to throw
We all
that.
have, we all have a stories, listen, we all have those beautiful stories of women like Karen and others that were, so, as well as, like I said, the women of those days and the guys of those days, when I think back, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, had so much substance.
Yeah,
I think because when we think about it, our parents were from the were born. My father was born in the 20s, right, or the 30s. Old movies, substance. So we're the children of. So we're gonna have some of that same type of, and they were all about build character. Our parents were about, who are you? Build character. You're gonna go out into the world, and we brought that with us. So I was just loving meeting and getting to know some of these great models and great people. I was telling Nadia, just thinking back on them, some of the, especially being with men, some of the guys like Billy Baldwin and Derek Harris
oh,
and Shannon. If you're watching, you're not watching me, hope you'll see this. And people like you, and how we used to just have a good time, and they were real men, but they all had such individual character. Like
yeah,
no one was the same.
yeah,
I'm not like Derek. I'm not like Alvin, who are my brothers, right?
yeah,
But we all have this individual
yeah,
character, and I love that about what we brought to the business. And it was the same behind the scenes.
yeah,
It was the same thing with our bookers. Our
yeah,
bookers were these amazing people that got us.
yeah.
I think they had probably the harder job because it's like being a babysitter.
It really is. It really is.
Where are you? You know what I mean? They had to be all of those things, and we, had to just kind of show up and be beautiful. But they were always just kind of like right there for us, and would probably eat, fight off a lion for their
Yes.
models. So I give them all a big applause.
Musa,
It's all the age.
I applaud you for just giving me the opportunity to do this.
Mm.
I applaud Era Management for putting this together, for Nadia creating this platform and producing this segment. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, not only your beautiful story, but this beautiful aura of yours, this light that you've just brightened up the day and brightened up this universe with your aura. And I love that about you. And I just cannot wait. I'm looking forward to getting up to New York City and spending some quality time, some good.
The good. Shout out to Bernard at the Leslie Bernard at the good. Okay.
We're gonna hit the good, you and I and Mr. Bernino. Well, I call him Bernino, Mr. Mark Baptiste. And Musa, thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
hour. And I look forward to seeing you soon, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you, Era. Thank you, Nadia, and thank you, Omar.
Thank
See you guys soon.
I'll see you soon. Ciao, guys.
Ciao.